While the guests downstairs admired the Miller tech empire, Nia Cross sat alone in the dim attic bedroom, reviewing the merger contract one last time to save her husband from his own incompetence. The heavy bass of a jazz quartet vibrated through the floorboards of the Gold Coast mansion, a rhythmic reminder of the celebration she was forbidden to join. Nia adjusted her reading glasses, her fingers hovering over a clause in Section 4B regarding ethical leadership. It was a mess. Grant had overlooked a critical compliance error that could have cost him the entire $50 million deal. With a sigh that carried the weight of 5 years of marriage, she corrected the data, saved the file, and closed the laptop just as the door clicked open. Grant Miller stepped inside, bringing with him the scent of expensive scotch and the roar of laughter from the hallway. He looked impeccable in a $5,000 tuxedo, his hair styled to perfection, every inch the golden boy of Chicago's tech scene. He didn't look at Nia's face. Instead, his eyes darted critically to her simple wool cardigan and the way her natural hair was pulled back in a practical bun. He walked over and snatched the tablet from the desk without a word of thanks. "Is it done?" he asked, checking his reflection in the window. "Section 4B was flawed, Grant," Nia said softly, her voice steady despite the sting of his dismissal. "I fixed the encryption protocols and the financial projections. If Mr. Sterling's team had seen what you wrote, they would have walked away." Grant let out a sharp, dismissive laugh. "That's why I keep you around, isn't it? You're good with the boring details." He turned to leave, but stopped at the door, his hand resting on the brass knob. "Stay up here tonight, Nia. I mean it. The investors arriving, they have certain expectations. We're selling a global luxury image tonight. They aren't used to seeing." He gestured vaguely at her, his meaning hanging in the air like a toxic cloud. "Let's just say, I don't want them confusing you with the hired help. It makes things awkward." Nia felt the insult settle deep in her chest, cold and familiar. "I am your wife, Grant. Not your staff." "You're my partner in private," he corrected, his tone hardening. "But out there, you don't look the part. Tiffany is handling the guests. She knows how to charm these people. She speaks their language." Before Nia could respond, he stepped out, closing the door firmly. The lock clicked. It wasn't a prison technically. She could open it from the inside, but the message was clear. She was being hidden away, erased from the narrative of the success she had built with her own hands. Moments later, the muffled sound of Grant's voice drifted up through the vents. He was making a toast. "To the future of Miller Tech," he announced, his voice oozing charisma. "And to the people who stand beside me, making me look good." Nia stood up, the silence of the room pressing against her ears. She could hear the applause, the clinking of crystal glasses, the laughter of a woman, Tiffany, echoing through the house that Nia had chosen, paid for and turned into a home. He had taken everything, her work, her credit, and now her dignity. But as she looked at the closed door, something shifted inside her. The patience that had sustained her for years finally shattered, replaced by a cold, sharp resolve. Nia walked to the window, watching the snow fall, and whispered to her reflection, "He thinks he built this. Tomorrow, he learns who the real architect is." Nia is about to show him who the real architect is, and you won't want to miss it. If you are enjoying the details of this story so far, please comment the number 8 below to mark your spot. If you haven't joined the family yet, I highly recommend you subscribe to Black King and turn on the bell. We have so much more drama and inspiration coming your way. Ready for the betrayal? Let's continue. The Christmas tree in the living room was piled high with gifts, but the only thing Grant handed Nia was a manila envelope with "divorce" stamped in bold letters. The house was finally quiet. The last of the investors had driven away in their limousines, leaving behind the scent of stale perfume and the debris of a celebration Nia hadn't been allowed to attend. She stood by the fireplace, the embers dying out, looking at the papers Grant had just tossed onto the coffee table like yesterday's junk mail. "What is this, Grant?" Her voice was a whisper, though she already knew. Grant loosened his bow tie, his face flushed with the adrenaline of the night. He poured himself another glass of scotch, not offering her one. "It's exactly what it looks like. We got the verbal agreement tonight. $50 million. The official ink dries tomorrow at noon." He took a long sip, smiling at the ceiling. "We're going global, Nia. London, Dubai, Tokyo. And to operate at that level, I need an asset that appreciates in value. You've plateaued. Plateaued. Nia repeated, the absurdity of the word hitting her. I wrote the business plan. I managed the finances when we were broke. I stood by you when everyone said Miller Tech was a joke. And I appreciate that, Grant said, his tone dismissive, as if thanking a waitress for refilling his water. But look at yourself. You're too local. I need a wife who looks the part. Someone who was born for magazines. As if on cue, the sound of heels clicking on the hardwood floor made Nia turn. Tiffany walked in from the patio, wearing a red silk gown that cost more than Nia's first car. She looked at Nia with a mixture of pity and amusement. Oh, honey, don't make this harder than it has to be, Tiffany purred, walking over to drape herself on Grant's arm. Grant needs someone who understands the lifestyle. We were actually just talking about your clothes. I'll make sure to donate them to a shelter. I'm sure they'll be very useful to people of your background. Grant laughed, a cruel, sharp sound. Pack a bag, Nia. But leave the jewelry. And the laptop. That's company property. Technically, everything in this house is company property now. You're throwing me out? No. Nia asked, incredulous. It's 20 degrees outside. It's the middle of the night. I want the house clear for a photo shoot tomorrow morning, Grant said, checking his watch. He walked over to the closet near the door where Nia's heavy winter coat was hanging. She reached for it, desperate for some layer of protection against the Chicago winter, but Grant grabbed it first. He looked at the coat, then at Tiffany, who was shivering slightly in her sleeveless gown. Here, Grant said, draping Nia's warm wool coat over Tiffany's shoulders. You look cold, babe. Grant, that's mine. Nia stepped forward, her hands trembling with rage. Consider it severance, he sneered, grabbing Nia by her thin sweater-clad arm and steering her toward the front door. He opened it, and the icy wind blasted into the warm foyer, carrying snowflakes that stung Nia's face. Goodbye, Nia. Don't come to the office tomorrow. Security has already been notified. He pushed her onto the porch. She stumbled, her sneakers sliding on the slick ice. She turned back, wanting to scream, to fight, to tell him he was making the biggest mistake of his life, but he was already closing the door. She saw Tiffany smirking in the background, wrapped in the warmth that should have been hers. As the heavy door slammed shut, locking her out of the life she built, Nia realized she had forgotten her wallet, but she still had the encrypted flash drive in her pocket. Chicago's winter wind bit like 1,000 needles, but the warmth Nia found in a rundown diner would prove stronger than any millionaire's fireplace. She stumbled through the door of Pop's place, the bell overhead jingling cheerfully, a stark contrast to the shivering wreck she had become. The diner was empty save for the old man behind the counter, wiping down the formica with a rag that had seen better days. Pops looked up, his eyes widening beneath bushy white eyebrows. He didn't ask what happened, or, why are you wearing a sweater in December? He just moved. Lord have mercy, he muttered, rounding the counter. He guided her to the booth nearest the radiator and draped his own heavy flannel jacket over her trembling shoulders. It smelled of motor oil and Old Spice, a scent that felt safer than the expensive cologne Grant wore. Drink this, he commanded gently, sliding a steaming mug of hot cocoa in front of her. On the house, kid. You look like you went 12 rounds with a blizzard. Nia wrapped her hands around the ceramic mug, the heat seeping into her frozen fingers. She reached into her pocket and touched the encrypted drive. It contained the real financial reports, the ones Grant tried to hide. He thought he had stripped her of everything, thrown her away like trash, but he had unknowingly left her with the weapon that would bring his entire facade crashing down. Pops placed a bowl of tomato soup next to the cocoa. No questions asked here, he said, pouring himself a coffee and leaning against the counter. You stay as long as you need. I'm open all night for Santa stragglers. Nobody deserves to be cold on Christmas Eve. Tears pricked Nia's eyes, not from the cold, but from the overwhelming kindness of a man who had so little, compared to the cruelty of a husband who had so much. Before she could thank him, the phone she had managed to save buzzed against her hip. It was a direct line number she recognized immediately. She hesitated, wiped her face, and answered. Ms. Cross. The voice was crisp, professional. This is Elena, Mr. Sterling's executive assistant. We've been trying to reach you all evening. Mr. Sterling refuses to sign the final Miller Tech contract tomorrow unless you are present to verify the data. He knows Grant didn't write that proposal. He knows it was the strategist. Grant Miller doesn't know we have your number. Nia straightened up, the heavy flannel jacket slipping slightly. The shivering stopped. Her eyes caught her reflection in the darkened window. Tired, yes, but unbroken. "Tell Mr. Sterling I'll be there," she said, her voice finding its steel. "But I'm not coming as Grant's wife." "And Elena? Do you still have the measurements for my consulting wardrobe on file?" "We do, ma'am. Mr. Sterling insisted we keep them." "Good. Don't send anything to the house. Grant locked me out. Send the navy blue power suit to Pop's place on 5th Street. I need to look like the person who actually runs the show." She hung up and looked at the old man. Pops watched her transformation, from a shivering victim to a commander ready for war, and grinned. "Go get him, kid. Breakfast is on me when you win." From the cold streets to the warmth of kindness, Nia is finally ready to fight back. If you are enjoying these details and rooting for her victory, please comment the number 8 below to show you are still here. Don't forget to subscribe to the Black King channel and hit that notification bell. We have so many more powerful stories like this coming your way. Your support helps us keep creating amazing content to inspire you. Now, let's continue. Grant Miller strode into the Sterling Global conference room like a king claiming his throne, holding Tiffany's hand, completely unaware that the throne was already occupied. The 40th floor view of a snow-covered Chicago was breathtaking, but Grant only had eyes for the contract sitting in the center of the mahogany table. He adjusted his silk tie, flashing a winning smile at the board members who watched him with unreadable expressions. As he moved toward the head of the table, he noticed a distinct navy blue coat hanging on the coat rack near the entrance, the same color as the suit Mr. Sterling had sent to Pop's place in Chapter 3. He frowned momentarily. It looked tailored, authoritative, nothing like the cheap wool coat he had forced Nia to leave behind last night. He dismissed the thought immediately. Nia was probably crying in a shelter somewhere, erased from his narrative. "Gentlemen," Grant announced, pulling out a chair for Tiffany. "I'd like to introduce my new Vice President of Image, Tiffany Vance. She'll be handling the aesthetic integration of our brands." Tiffany popped her gum, scrolling through her phone, barely glancing up. "Hey," she said flatly. The board members exchanged unimpressed glances. Mr. Sterling, a man of iron principles and old-school manners, didn't even blink. He sat at the far end of the table, his hands folded over a thick file. "We are here to discuss data, Mr. Miller, not aesthetics," Sterling said, his voice dropping the temperature in the room by 10 degrees. "Before any signature is placed on paper, my chief strategy consultant needs to vet your answers regarding the Project Horizon security protocols. There were discrepancies in your initial presentation." Grant laughed, waving a dismissive hand. "Bring him in. I know my business inside and out. I can answer anything your guy throws at me." Sterling corrected. "And she is already here." The side door to the private executive suite opened. The rhythmic click of high heels on marble silenced the room. Nia Cross walked in. She was transformed. Gone were the oversized sweaters and the posture of a woman trying to be invisible. She wore a sharp, navy blue power suit that fit her like armor, her hair styled in elegant braids that crowned her head. She didn't look at Grant. She walked straight to the empty chair next to Mr. Sterling and sat down, opening a blue folder with a gold seal. Grant's jaw dropped. He stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly against the floor. "Nia? What the hell are you doing here? Did you follow me?" He looked frantically at security. "This is my ex-wife. She's mentally unstable. She's stalking me. Remove her." Tiffany looked up from her phone, confused. "Wait, isn't that the maid?" "Mr. Miller." Mr. Sterling slammed his hand on the table, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "You will address the strategist with respect. She is the only reason we even looked at your proposal. While you were busy building an image, she has been quietly fixing your mistakes for the last 6 months." The room went deadly silent. Grant looked from the imposing CEO to the woman he had thrown out into the snow less than 24 hours ago. He tried to laugh, but it came out as a choked wheeze. Grant stammered, "But she's just my wife. She doesn't know business." Nia calmly opened her file and asked, "Then who fixed the encryption error in your Section 4B last night, Grant?" The silence in the room was deafening as Nia's question hung in the air, stripping away Grant's geniusio mask layer by layer. Grant opened his mouth, then closed it, his face flushing a deep, mottled red. He looked down at his copy of the contract, flipping pages frantically, searching for an answer that wasn't there because he hadn't written a single word of it. Well, obviously, we updated the protocols to industry standards," Grant stammered, sweating visibly under the boardroom lights. "It was a team effort. My team handles the minutiae. Industry standards wouldn't have passed Mr. Sterling's audit," Nia corrected, her voice calm and piercing. She turned to the board. "The encryption in Section 4B was outdated by 3 years. I rewrote the code personally last night, while Grant was entertaining guests. I also adjusted the Q3 revenue projections to account for the market shift in Asia, something Grant missed because he was too busy planning his victory party." Grant slammed his hand on the table. "Stop it. You're lying. You're just trying to humiliate me because I left you." He pointed a shaking finger at her. "You see this, Mr. Sterling? She's vindictive. She's jealous of Tiffany. She's trying to sabotage my deal." Nia didn't flinch. She leaned forward, locking eyes with him. "You told me last night that I should stay invisible to protect your image, Grant. You said I look like hired help. Well, I'm very visible now. How's the image holding up?" The reference hit its mark. Grant's composure shattered completely. The pressure of the failing deal, the humiliation of being outsmarted by the woman he deemed inferior, and the silence of the room broke him. "You think you're so smart?" he screamed, his voice cracking. "This is a setup. You can't take her word over mine. She's nobody. I only married her for the diversity points. She belongs at home, scrubbing floors, not sitting in a boardroom dictating terms to me." The air in the room seemed to vanish. The board members looked down, uncomfortable and appalled. Tiffany stopped chewing her gum, her eyes wide. Even she knew he had gone too far. Mr. Sterling stood up slowly. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. His quiet rage was far more terrifying. "Diversity points?" he repeated, the words dripping with ice. "Mr. Miller, you just insulted the most intelligent person in this room, and you just proved that your global image is nothing but a facade for bigotry." Sterling picked up the $50 million contract. He looked at Grant, then at Nia, and with deliberate slowness, he tore the document in half. The sound of ripping paper echoed like a thunderclap. "Sterling Global does not do business with bigots. The deal is dead. Get out of my building." "No." Grant gasped, reaching out as if to catch the falling pieces of his future. "Mr. Sterling, please. It was just stress. I didn't mean it. Tiffany, tell them. Tell them who I really am." Grant turned to Tiffany for support, but she was already standing up, grabbing her designer purse. "I don't date bankrupt racists," she sneered, walking out the door without looking back. Snow began to fall gently on Christmas Eve, covering the city in white, cleansing away the ugliness of the afternoon. Outside the towering steel building of Sterling Global, the world felt quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos Nia had just left behind on the 40th floor. She buttoned her navy blue coat, the symbol of her reclaimed power, and stepped out into the crisp air. She didn't get far before the sound of frantic footsteps crunched in the snow behind her. "Nia. Wait. Please." Grant Miller stumbled out of the revolving doors. He looked nothing like the polished CEO of yesterday. His tie was crooked, his face pale, and his eyes wild with desperation. He reached for her arm, but stopped when the security guard stepped closer. Grant dropped to his knees right there on the sidewalk, oblivious to the pedestrians watching. "Baby, please," he begged, his voice cracking. "It was just the stress talking back there. I didn't mean any of it. We can fix this. I can fire Tiffany. I can make it up to you. I need you, Nia. Miller Tech is nothing without you." Nia looked down at him. For the first time in years, she didn't see a husband or a partner. She saw a small, frightened man who had built a castle on sand. She reached into her bag and pulled out the manila envelope he had thrown at her the night before. "You're right, Grant. You do need me. But I don't need you." She handed him the envelope. I signed the papers. You wanted a wife who looks the part. You're free to find her now. But you won't find her with my money, and you certainly won't build your next empire on my back. Nia, don't do this. It's done, she said simply. A sleek black town car pulled up to the curb, Mr. Sterling's personal driver. Nia stepped inside, leaving Grant kneeling in the snow, clutching the divorce papers, a king of nothing. 30 minutes later, the town car pulled up to a familiar corner. The neon sign of Pop's Place buzzed against the twilight. Nia walked in, the bell jingling just as it had the night before. The diner was warm, smelling of cinnamon and coffee. Pops looked up from the counter, and his weathered face broke into a grin. "Well, look at you," Pops said, wiping his hands on his apron. "You look like you just bought the whole city." "Better," Nia smiled, sliding onto a stool. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a check, her advance from the new independent consulting contract with Sterling Global. It was enough to renovate the diner and keep Pops comfortable for a long time. She slid it across the counter. "For the hot cocoa. And for the coat. You were the only one who saw me when I was invisible, Pops." The old man looked at the check, his eyes filling with tears. He reached out and patted her hand with his rough, calloused palm. "I knew you were a queen the moment you walked in here yesterday, kid. Never let anyone tell you different. Not for $1 million. Not for anything." Nia turned to the window, watching the Christmas lights twinkle in the falling snow. She saw her reflection in the glass, strong, independent, and finally, truly seen. The pain of the betrayal was still there, but it was fading, replaced by a quiet, steady pride. She took a sip of the hot cocoa. It tasted like freedom. The best Christmas gift wasn't under a tree. It was the woman she had finally allowed herself to become.